The documents found at Raymill House revealed Camilla's true plans. Even Charles didn't know that his wife had been planning for years how to survive within the royal family after his death. But the most shocking part was the secret arrangements made regarding Prince Harry's inheritance. On a cold February morning in Wiltshire, the mist surrounding Raymill House concealed secrets that no one could have imagined until that day. Queen Camilla's Georgian-style mansion stood in a quiet corner, away from royal life. The old stone walls had darkened from moisture, and the rose bushes in the garden were in winter slumber. Malcolm Henderson was a 25-year veteran inspector of the royal property management. That morning, he had come to Raymill House for a routine security and inventory check. Camilla's rare visits to this place had led to relaxed security protocols, but Malcolm was someone who did every job meticulously. Security guard James looked slightly surprised when he greeted Malcolm. "Did any information come from Her Majesty about this, sir?" he asked in a hesitant voice. Malcolm nodded. "Routine check, James. Don't worry. No one's inside, right?" "No, sir. Her Majesty only came twice last year, but—" James stopped, as if he had something to say, but was uncertain. Malcolm looked curiously. "But what, James?" The young security guard shrugged. "Nothing, sir. It's just that the house gets very quiet sometimes." When Malcolm entered the house, he felt as if time had stopped. Everything was in perfect order, but it looked equally unlived in. The house seemed like a museum, every item in its place, but none of them appeared to be used. Camilla's youth photographs hung on the salon walls. Horse racing competitions, pictures with old friends, and most interestingly, private moments photographed long before she married Charles. The display of such personal memories here caught Malcolm's attention. James noticed Malcolm's gaze. "No one normally sees these photographs, sir. Her Majesty covers them when guests come. Only we security guards know about them," he said in a low voice. Questions began forming in Malcolm's mind. Why was Camilla keeping such personal memories here? Why was she keeping them secret? While walking through the house, he noticed that each room reflected a different era. It was as if Camilla was preserving her pre-royal identity here. He stopped at the upstairs study. On the desk were traces of old journals, notebooks, and correspondence. But none belonged to recent times. Everything seemed frozen in the past. When he went down to the kitchen, Malcolm noticed something odd. Next to the refrigerator stood an old cabinet that didn't match the other cupboards. It had a small but sturdy lock on it. This cabinet seemed to have been added later, not fitting with the kitchen's overall design. When he asked James, the young man's face took on a puzzled expression. "I don't know about that cabinet, sir. Normally there's nothing locked here. I've been working here for 3 years, but I've never seen it," James said, looking genuinely surprised. Malcolm examined it more closely. The lock wasn't new, but appeared frequently used. Camilla's fingerprints were still visible on the metal. This was a lock that was regularly opened and closed. Malcolm's inspector experience kicked in. According to royal protocols, records of all locked areas should be kept, but this cabinet wasn't in any records, so this was something completely personal and unofficial. He began searching the area more thoroughly. In a hidden drawer under the kitchen counter, he found a carefully labeled small key. Written in Camilla's delicate handwriting was RMH, private, for C only. This key seemed to have been specifically hidden. Malcolm's hands began to tremble. What did this key mean? And what was inside that cabinet that Camilla had so carefully concealed? What was this secret that even James didn't know about? When he turned the key, the cabinet opened silently. The sight inside took Malcolm's breath away. There were neatly filed document groups, sealed envelopes, and different colored folders. Everything was arranged with perfect organization, but these weren't normal documents. On top sat a thick, official-looking folder. On it was a title written in Camilla's characteristic handwriting, but when Malcolm's eyes read those words, he froze. This title pointed to something far more serious than ordinary family planning. When he opened the folder, the professional organization of the documents inside immediately caught his attention. Pages full of plans, scenarios, calculations. But these weren't ordinary family plans. These documents were the most complex and surprising documents Malcolm had encountered in his 25-year inspector experience. Each page contained extremely carefully thought-out strategies, names, dates, amounts, detailed analyses, and most surprisingly, everything was written in Camilla's own handwriting. These documents had clearly been prepared over many years, perhaps for more than a decade. As Malcolm turned the pages, he began to understand the scope of these documents, prepared with a lawyer's meticulousness. This wasn't just a woman's future concerns. This was a systematic and multidimensional plan that would deeply affect the royal family's fate. Among the documents were official seals, legal references, and financial calculations. Malcolm was amazed at how knowledgeable Camilla was in these matters. As Malcolm progressed through the documents, his shock increased even more. Among them were letter drafts, legal advice, and financial calculations. But the most striking thing was certain names appearing repeatedly. Tom Parker Bowles's name was on almost every page. Prince Harry's name appeared in a different context. There were detailed analyses about William and Charles. But understanding exactly what these meant required deeper examination. One letter draft particularly caught his attention. It seemed to be written to Charles, but never sent. Its content chilled Malcolm's blood. This letter showed how Camilla tried to influence Charles on certain matters. In another document, there were action plans prepared for various scenarios. Different strategies had been developed for each situation. Malcolm couldn't believe how detailed and professional these were. He now understood the seriousness of the situation. If these documents leaked to the media, they could create an earthquake effect in the royal family. Malcolm took out his phone with trembling hands and called Sir Michael Stevens from Buckingham Palace. The phone rang twice before Stevens answered. "Sir Michael, I need to speak with you urgently about Raymill House. I found quite sensitive materials." Stevens' voice immediately took on a serious tone. He knew that Malcolm had never made such an urgent call during his 25 years of service. "What kind of materials, Malcolm? Can you give me a bit more detail?" As Malcolm spoke about the documents, the silence from Stevens grew deeper. Only heavy breathing could be heard from the other end of the phone line. "Malcolm, is no one in that house right now? Has anyone else seen these documents you found?" "Only security guard James is here, sir, but he didn't see anything. I found the documents inside a locked cabinet. No one was even aware of this cabinet's existence." Stephen's voice showed increased concern. "Malcolm, listen to me very carefully now. Don't touch anything. Don't move any document from its place. Leave everything where you found it and immediately leave that room. I'll be there within an hour." "Sir, but these documents seem really important. Maybe ... "Malcolm!" Stephen's voice came out sharp and commanding. "Don't share this matter with anyone. No one, including James. This has become a royal security matter. Now lock that cabinet and stay away." Stephen's panic in his voice made Malcolm even more worried. Were these documents really that critical? And why had Stevens reacted so quickly? It seemed as if he had experienced this kind of situation before. After Malcolm hung up the phone, he noticed his hands were still trembling. He had been working for the royal family for 25 years, but he had never encountered such a reaction. While waiting for Stevens, Malcolm tried to stay away from the documents, but his curiosity prevailed. There were other files on the bottom shelf of the cabinet. When he opened one of them, what he found completely surprised him. This file contained notes about Charles's health condition, treatment process, and future projections. But these weren't just medical information. It also included strategies on how Camilla planned to use this information. In another file, the relationship between William and Harry had been analyzed. There were detailed plans about both their characters, weaknesses, and how to approach them. Camilla's ability to create psychological profiles amazed Malcolm. The last file he pulled from the bottom contained the real bomb. However, Malcolm didn't get a chance to look at this file because Sir Michael Stevens arrived at Ray Mill House with legal advisor Sarah Richmond and security chief David Walsh. The expression on their faces looked quite tense and serious. Stevens quickly came to Malcolm's side. There was deep concern on his face, and this normally calm, experienced bureaucrat appeared quite tense this time. "Where are the documents, Malcolm?" "No one touched them, right? Is everything exactly as you found it?" Malcolm led them to the locked cabinet. When Stevens glanced at the first file, his face turned pale, and he took a deep breath. Sarah Richmond and David Walsh also began examining the documents, with silent but meaningful glances passing between them. "These documents are extremely sensitive," Stevens said, deep concern in his voice. "Malcolm, we will keep this matter completely confidential for now. You will not talk to anyone, including your wife. This is a royal security matter." Sarah Richmond was taking notes constantly while examining the documents. The dates on these documents go back very far. Some are from 10 to 15 years ago. If the content of these documents is true, and if they were actually implemented, it could have serious legal consequences, she said, lowering her voice. David Walsh was concerned from a security perspective. "If this information leaks to the media, the scandal will be huge. Not just Britain, but world press will cover this news. The royal family's reputation will be irreversibly damaged." As Stevens looked at the documents again, beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. "We need to inform King Charles first, but we also need to find out whether Queen Camilla was aware of these documents. Is it possible that anyone else knows about these documents?" Malcolm said hesitantly. "Sir, in my opinion, these documents were only known by Camilla. The lock, the key, everything is very personal." The next morning at Windsor, while Charles was waiting for a routine security briefing, Stevens told him about the discovery at Ray Mill House. Charles initially couldn't grasp the seriousness of the situation, but as Stevens began explaining the details, the surprise on his face gradually turned into great disappointment. "Did Camilla really prepare these documents?" Charles asked, deep fatigue in his voice. "I had no idea about the existence of such detailed plans. Camilla never mentioned it to me." Stevens answered very carefully. "Your Majesty, the documents are definitely written in Camilla's own handwriting and appear to have been prepared over a very long process, perhaps for more than a decade. Their contents are quite detailed and quite strategic." Charles stood up and turned to the window. He remained silent for a long time while looking at the old oak trees in the garden. "I thought I knew the woman I have been with for 30 years, he said quietly. "But these documents, they show a different Camilla, a side of her I never knew." Stevens continued carefully, observing Charles's emotional state. "Your Majesty, we need to discuss how to handle this situation. Will you meet with Queen Camilla? Do you think she was aware of the existence of these documents?" Charles fell into deep thought. These documents had shaken his trust not only in her, but in the entire royal family. "Stevens, who else knows about these documents, he asked. "Currently only our security team, Your Majesty, but if this information leaks out—" Stevens didn't complete his sentence. That evening at Clarence House, Charles was waiting for Camilla's arrival. When Camilla arrived, she immediately noticed the change in Charles's behavior. "There's something we need to discuss about Ray Mill House, Camilla," Charles said, not taking his eyes off her. Camilla's facial expression changed instantly. At that moment, she understood that the secret she had carefully kept for years had been revealed. "Charles, I can explain," she began, but Charles raised his hand to stop her. "Can you explain these documents, Camilla? Why did you make such detailed plans? Why did you hide them from me?" Camilla's eyes filled with tears. "Everything was for your good, Charles. We had to prepare for the future. I had to think about what would happen after you died." Charles stood up. But the content of these plans, these aren't normal preparations, Camilla. These documents mean you don't know me. The conversation that night became a turning point in their relationship. Camilla tried to explain her plans while Charles felt his trust had been shaken. "You're my wife, Camilla, not a strategist," Charles said in a tired voice. This argument would shape the royal family's future. Charles would now question Camilla's every decision, while Camilla would be left vulnerable due to her plans being exposed. In the following days, a tense atmosphere prevailed in the palace. The documents found at Mill House weren't just pieces of paper. They were truths that shook the foundation of trust in a marriage. And these were just the beginning, because those documents were merely harbingers of the real dramas that would unfold in the royal family's future. So what exactly did these documents contain? And what were Camilla's real plans? These questions held answers that would change the royal family's destiny. Until we meet in the next video,